Good evening, councillors, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to welcome you to this evening's council meeting. My name is Councillor Patricia McAllister and I am the Lord Mayor of Westminster. Before we begin, I would like to remind all members that we are live streaming this meeting and therefore microphones will be active when members are speaking and the cameras will be broadcasting until the meeting closes. A list of all the members who are present will be recorded in the minutes of the meeting. As this will be a busy meeting, I would like to, as usual, remind members to be as succinct as possible in their speeches and questions so that we can cover all the business we need to. Before we move to the formal agenda for this meeting, I wanted to take a moment to reflect on the ongoing events in the Middle East and ask all to join me in a minute's silence for those who have suffered and continue to suffer as a result of this conflict. Please stand. Thank you. Before we move to agenda item 1, I wanted to inform members of a change in the order of proceedings this evening. We will be taking agenda item 11, the vote on the report in relation to the appointment of the Honorary Recorder, earlier in the meeting after item 6. Appointment of Relief Chair. As I may need to vacate the chair during the meeting, I propose that Councillor Ryan Judd be chosen to take the chair as necessary. Please may I have a seconder for the motion? Thank you. Councillor Ormsby has seconded my motion that Councillor Judd chairs the meeting as necessary. Unless any member objects, the motion will be deemed to be agreed. If anyone has an objection, please say so now. Thank you. Councillor Judd, please join me on the dais. Agenda item 2, minutes from previous meeting. Unless any member wishes to raise a point of order relating to the accuracy of the minutes, I will consider that members are content that I sign the minutes of the last meeting. Please state now if you wish to raise a point of order. Thank you. The minutes are agreed. Agenda item 3, Lord Mayor's communications. These are set out on the agenda. Over the weekend, I attended a number of remembrance services and I wanted to take a moment at this point in the meeting to remember all those who have given their lives for the defence of this country and the freedoms we all hold dear. Please join me in standing for a minute's silence. Thank you. Agenda item 4, declarations of interest. It is necessary to declare any interest in relation to the issues on which there will be a vote. These items were set out in the list of speakers on the order paper. Members need to declare an interest in the items selected for debate if they are speaking in that debate. All members in attendance were asked to identify in advance of the meeting if they have an interest to declare. If anyone has any disclosable pecuniary interests or any other significant interests to declare, please do so now. On to item agenda 5. There is no statement on urgent matters. Agenda item 6. Councillor presented petitions and deputations. All councillors were asked to notify in advance of the meeting if they have a petition they wish to present. If anyone has a petition they would like to present, please mention this now.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I have a petition from just shy of 100 members of the public from Hereford Avenue and the Blandford Estate against the proposed move of a cleansing depot to the estate from another location. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Swaddle. Thank you very much. Thank you. As mentioned earlier, we now move to agenda item 11, appointment of the Honorary Recorder. I am delighted to welcome His Honour Judge Tony Baumgartner and his husband Dennis Kavanagh to the full council meeting this evening to witness this vote. I now ask members to vote on the recommendation of the report for full council entitled Appointment of the Honorary Recorder. The recommendation is deemed to have been moved and seconded. Can I ask those in favour to vote? Yep. Thank you. Those against? Those abstaining? I declare the recommendation is agreed. Judge Baumgartner, congratulations on your formal appointment as the Honorary Recorder for the City of Westminster. I have already had the pleasure of meeting you on several occasions, and I look forward to more during my term of office. You're more than welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but if you would like to leave now, please do so, and I wish you good night.
Thank you.
Agenda item 7, public participation. Each member of the public selected for this item and here this evening has submitted a question which they will present to the relevant Cabinet member. They will have up to 2 minutes to present their question. Then the relevant Cabinet member will have up to 2 minutes to respond. Can I ask that when you are presenting your question, you adhere to the question you submitted, which you have a copy of? Can I also ask the Cabinet members who are responding to be as succinct as possible in their responses? There will be no right of reply, and I ask that once you've received your response, you return to your seat. All questions asked and responses provided will be made available on the Council's website in the days after the meeting. Can I now ask Andrea Brescia to join us at the front of the chamber to ask his question?
Good evening. What strategies are you putting in place for maladministration and injustice within the housing services?
Thank you. I now ask Councillor Lisa Begum to respond.
Thank you for your question, Mr. Briskia. I know that for too long, the housing services that our residents have been receiving have not been as good as they need to be. In June this year, we made some structural changes to establish housing and commercial partnerships Housing and Commercial Partnerships Directorate to focus resource and attention on our housing services to support long-term improvement and change. The recent decisions from the Housing Ombudsman on cases from 2021 have been regrettable. We never want to be in a position where we are found to have failed our residents to such an extreme degree. And I apologise to all residents who have had to seek a remedy through the Ombudsman. The lessons we've learned from the Ombudsman's findings are directly informing our service improvements, including how we identify, record and tailor our service to support vulnerable residents. We are also working to refocus our complaints procedure to ensure that the resident experience is at the centre of the process, ensuring timely, high-quality responses that get the outcome right first time and build in lessons learned to make sure there is a focus on sustained service improvement. In the coming months, we will also be finalising the housing management compensation policy so that we are more transparent with residents about how compensation is calculated and offered when we have got things wrong. While we have a long way to go until the housing service fully matches the aspirations we have for it, I hope that the above reassurances reassures you that we are working hard to deliver change for our service, for our residents.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Brescia. You may now return to your seat. Yeah, okay. Can I now ask Bal Baines to join us at the front of the chamber to ask his question? Thank you, Mr Baines.
Good evening. I understand Buckingham Gate and the surrounding areas are designated as conservation areas. Could you tell me how and why houses at the end of Castle Lane were allowed to ruin this block of houses with magnificent architecture by allowing building another level on the original roof? It has made them very unsightly and are not in keeping with the area. It is so sad that the tourists are always taking pictures to put on the social media.
Thank you, Mr Baines. May I ask Councillor Jeff Barraclough to respond, please?
So thanks for asking the question, and thank you for taking such a strong interest in our area, in the built environment, and in protection of the views, I think, that we all feel so precious. This is a Notting Hill Genesis development to refurbish and extend 4 residential blocks on Castle Lane to provide 88 flats for affordable rent or shared ownership. 11 of the flats will be delivered by adding an extra storey. The planning permission was given 10 years ago, well before my time when this administration took over. The Castle Lane blocks were originally built in the 1880s to house workers at the Stag Brewery. They're in the Birdcage Walk conservation area, and I think they're quite attractive. They're identified as buildings of merit and contribute positively to the conservation area. However, before the renovations began, the roofs were flat and cluttered with a collection of unsightly stair enclosures and tank rooms. In contrast, the new roofs would include 11 affordable flats and support a large array of solar panels contributing to a sustainable energy supply. Now, I appreciate opinions differ on matters of design, and these indeed can be quite jarring from some viewpoints. And I'm not here to defend the choice, and there's nothing to be done at this stage. However, I should say that buildings are not finished. Contractors still need to add cladding in many places and extend the chimneys above the roof line, and officers tell me at that point that will ensure the extensions appear as integral parts of the building composition and provide a seamless termination of the buildings at roof level. But in summary, the Council's current design team believes that when complete, these new flats will not harm the conservation area. Now, I appreciate not everyone's going to agree, but it's important to remember the project does bring the refurbishment of the existing flats, provision of 11 new affordable ones, and solar panels. But thank you for asking the question.
Thank you, Councillor Barraclough. Thank you. You may take your seat. Thank you very much. Can I now ask Leanne Austin to join us at the front of the chamber to ask her question?
Good evening, everybody. How does the council expect leaseholders to pay these high bills for major works? Although we get payment plans, I thought that the council was meant to cap what leaseholders were charged.
Sorry about that. Thank you. I now ask Councillor Lisa Begum to respond.
Thank you for your question, Leanne. I understand that the current cost of some of our major works programmes are substantial and that many leaseholders are worried about their ability to afford these. Many of the projects underway or due to start over the next couple of years have been impacted by issues out of the council's control, such as cost of raw materials or labour costs. We have worked to mitigate this as much as possible, looking where possible to postpone or reduce the scope of the works currently planned. This, of course, comes with the caveat that there is no guarantee that costs will be lower when those works finally happen. In certain circumstances, costs to leaseholders are capped. For example, some works around fire safety are for the council to bear, regardless of whether the works are carried out to tenanted or leasehold properties. Similarly, where the council is in receipt of government funding to carry out a set of works, a cap would be imposed. However, this does not apply to the majority of our major works projects. We do offer a wide range of payment options to help leaseholders manage the cost of major works and are looking at what else we can do to support. We're focusing a huge amount of resource and attention towards housing to help improve the service we deliver for our residents. This includes looking at how we deliver major works differently, and we will engage directly with residents on this. I know this doesn't immediately change things for you, but I would encourage you to speak to our leasehold services team if you're worried about your circumstances, and they can support you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Begum. Thank you, Ms Austin.
Thank you.
If you'd like to take your seat, please. Thank you. Can I now ask Philip Parker to join us at the front of the chamber to ask his question?
Good evening. What measures is the Council taking to monitor and enforce the new dedicated e-bike and e-scooter parking bays, including whether the e-bike companies are providing information and data on their geofencing enforcement and fines levied on incorrect use, and whether action is being taken to suspend or modify parking bays where persistent antisocial parking is still occurring?
Thank you, Mr Parker. I now ask Councillor Paul de Moldenberg to respond.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr Parker, for your question. We are trialling a network of about 350 parking bays for hire e-bikes across Westminster. This is in response to residents and visitor complaints about dockless e-bikes being left on the pavement, endangering pedestrian safety. I have to say this, despite lobbying the government to regulate e-bikes and e-scooters, it's very disappointing that it was not included in the recent King's Speech. So the market remains unregulated and leaves the council with very limited powers when it comes to managing dockless bikes and enforcing against problem operators. Nevertheless, we have a network, Phase 1, which covers the central areas, launched in October, has resulted in a big reduction in the number of bikes blocking the pavement. And of course, and I hope that's welcomed by people. Phase 2 of the network launched yesterday on 14th of November. And whilst we hope to reach a high level of compliance as possible, some users continually, unfortunately, to abandon their bikes or park outside one of our designated bays. Operators have been issuing warnings and fines to users who continually break the rules. To date, more than 3,000 warnings have been issued to users parking in a non-compliant way, and more than 200 fines have been issued. 13 hotspots across the network, including Beaumont Street and Marylebone High Street, have been identified, and the council is actively working to address the problems. All of our bays are being trialled under the powers of an experimental traffic order, which means we are able to make modifications where necessary throughout the 18-month trial period. Where required, bays will be suspended and or removed should no improvement be seen in those locations. Officers are also investigating the possibility of further coverage and density of the bay network, of overcrowding in specific bays.
Thank you, Councillor de Moldenberg. Thank you, Mr Parker. You may now return to your seat. Thank you. That was the last question in this item. Thank you all for taking the time to participate this evening. We're all extremely grateful to you. Thank you. If you would like to stay for the remainder of the meeting, you are more than welcome, and you can make your way to the public gallery. If you are leaving us now, I wish you a good night and thank you again for attending. Thank you. Agenda item 8, questions. There are 45 minutes for questions. Will all members wishing to ask a question please indicate now and continue doing so until your request has been noted by the Chief Executive and Director of Law and Governance. The other side. Is that it?
Yes.
Is that it?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you all. Please remember that questions may be asked of a Cabinet member or a committee chair. Unfortunately, neither Councillor Roca nor Councillor Sanquest are able to join us this evening. Therefore, can I ask that you have any questions relating to culture or leisure? These are directed to Councillor Jessica Toll, and any question on children's services to Councillor Tazol. In relation to Councillor Sanquest's portfolio, Councillor Aisha Less will answer any questions on consultation reform, resident participation or equalities. Councillor Butler-Thalassis on community investment and Councillor Boothroyd on digital and customer service. I will call members who indicated that they wish to ask a question after Councillor Robotham has asked her 3 questions. Questions should be brief, I beg of you. Councillor Robotham, please ask the first of your 3 questions.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. To the Leader of the Council, we welcome the Council lighting City Hall green to mark Islamophobia Awareness Month, but with the shocking rise of anti-Semitism on our streets and suffered by our residents, will he commit to show an equally clear and public sign that anti-Semitism is not acceptable anywhere in our city?
Thank you, Lord Mayor, thank you so much for that question. Absolutely, as each year and especially important at this time of tumult, we mark Islamophobia Awareness Month with a series of events here. But I absolutely agree of the importance of tackling anti-Semitism. I've spoken about it many times over the last 6 weeks in particular, and obviously in the times before that too. We are working as a council to look at ways through the Communities Department to expand and enhance our work on anti-Semitism awareness, working with the CST and other Jewish community organisations on that. We've met with the London Jewish Forum and others on those sort of matters, and we're looking at how we can enhance what we do as a council. It's not our role to sort of create national events. I'm aware there are debates happening on that at the moment, but we absolutely want to enhance what we're already doing as a council and working with the community around the events that they're doing to centre our work on anti-Semitism, because we have seen a shocking rise in anti-Semitism, particularly over the last 6 weeks, and we know that our communities are frightened, and we've been doing a lot of work as a council alongside the Metropolitan Police to reach out to Jewish communities and all of our communities who are experiencing fear right now, with a particular focus on protecting places of worship. And I've worked with a lot of rabbis and other members of the Jewish community around particular security concerns that they have, and we're working closely with officers in the Met on that.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Is the leader aware that Nikki Aiken has applied for debate in the House of Commons on the creation of an annual British Jewish History Month, which has so far been supported by a number of MPs cross-party, including Karen Buck, who's co-signed it. Will he commit that if this is successful, that the council will support this and recognise this as it's supported by both of the city's MPs? And indeed, will he consider actually showing the commitment to fighting anti-Semitism by doing this ahead of the government actually launching it?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I think what we obviously absolutely want to support all measures that have been taken to tackle anti-Semitism at this time. I think obviously we'll look to see what the Jewish community institutions, if it has the full support of the board and the JLC and others, then absolutely, then we will absolutely look to see what we can do about this. I think we need to do it in the right way, and but absolutely look and see what we can do. I think we need the council to be working in unison with the community on this. So I think we can absolutely take it away and look at what we can do both over the coming months to tackle anti-Semitism, enhancing our existing programmes and looking at how we can work with community institutions on what they want going forwards. And then obviously absolutely support the principle that's been outlined and supported by both the city's MPs.
Thank you. Lord Mayor, to the Cabinet Member for Finance. Does he think a cost of 42%, 42p in every pound, to administer the Community's Priorities Programme represents fair value for our residents?
Lord Mayor, I would have to be briefed about that. As you know, that's not the Community Priorities Fund is not within my direct area. I can tell the Leader of the Opposition that we are absolutely committed to getting value for money in every penny that the Council spends for a whole amount of reasons.
Lord Mayor, I apologise if I asked the wrong Cabinet Member, but this goes to the heart of value for money at Westminster. Now, I served on the board of the lottery for 8 years, and there we distributed over 800 million of grants every year, some of them as few as a few £100, and we operated with a cost percentage of 7%. 42% for the council is pretty shocking. Will he or whoever is the Cabinet Member in charge please commit to overhauling this so that the £500,000 spent on administering it actually goes to the people most in need in our city?
So I'm going to say that I have very recently taken this over from Cara, who is on maternity leave. So I know very much more about the delivery of the programme than I do about the finance and the administration. But I will look into this particular point and I will give you a written response.
Thank you. But it is a shocking cost. Lord Mayor, my final question, if I may. To the Cabinet Member for Finance, again, your evening. A year ago, I asked for an update on your key manifesto pledge to create a panel of independent financial experts to ensure value for money, and you said this was in hand. Please, could you give us an update on who these financial experts are and how they're feeding into this year's budget process?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yes, as the Cabinet, as the Leader of the Opposition be well aware, we have a pledge to set up a financial review board of independent external experts to scrutinise council spending, which we have termed a critical friends board, to help ensure the council budgets are providing value for money and identify opportunities for cost saving, which we have made some progress on. We are still in the process of appointing the board.
I think that deserves a supplementary. This was a key manifesto pledge, and we were told that this was going to identify savings which would help protect frontline services. We're almost into our second budget, and we still haven't even identified who these financial experts are that you think are going to going to help with this. Now, the leader, very helpfully, over a year ago in this chamber, made a very clear and unequivocal statement that all manifesto pledges would be kept. So could the Cabinet Member for Finance be clear, was this just a gimmick, or is he going to actually do this?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. We are going to do this. We have already a number of people who have accepted provisionally being on the board. We are in the process of finding and of settling out what exactly its role is going to be. Other councils have undoubtedly implemented successful efficiency savings which have not been done at Westminster. We really want to open up to ideas from outside. For this project, we are reaching out to people who are familiar with local government in other authorities and with budget setting, and the offer is intended especially for those who have helped with finding efficiency savings within public sector budgets.
Thank you, Councillor Boothroyd. May I ask Councillor Scarborough to ask our question?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So my question is for the Cabinet Member for Public Protection and Licensing. So hello, Aisha. Please can you explain how she thinks that after her review of the city inspectors who will now work Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. with a pool of inspectors on duty 24/7 is an improvement when weekends and evenings are when problems occur in our streets?
Thank you very much for your question, Councillor Scarborough. I can reassure you that we have increased our city inspectors to 80 people, 80 officers on the streets. The reason we have trialled it out this way is so we can work with our residents and our businesses to basically identify the issues and have an ongoing dialogue with those residents, with those businesses about the issues that matter to all of us on our streets. We are obviously, we have set timings for our city inspectors, but we do have a response team that is there 24 hours for some of those difficult issues. But as I said, every issue will be will have a dedicated city inspectors that will follow up casework.
Supplementary, Lord Mayor. Well, as we did this a number of years ago and it didn't work, will you therefore agree to review this in 3 months, because then you'll have some stats to show whether this is working or not?
Of course, without a doubt, Councillor Scarborough, we will be reviewing the process every sort of few months to see how things are working. We'll have feedback from the officers from the ground. We'll also have KPIs as well, so we'll have, you know, a kind of index that we can kind of look back and see what is working, what isn't working. So obviously, in months to come, we'll have a more defined kind of, you know, idea about how things are working on our streets. And actually, it's important that we get feedback from residents and businesses throughout the whole process so we can improve, and we only want to improve and make our city safer and better for everyone.
So it's a yes in 3 months?
Hopefully, yes.
Thank you, Councillor Les.
Thank you.
Councillor Small-Edwards, would you like to ask your question, please?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. To the Leader of the Council, what steps has the Council taken to support our communities in response to the conflict in the Middle East?
Thank you very much for your question, Lord Mayor. Our focus throughout this crisis has been to do what we can as a City Council to support our communities here in Westminster at this difficult time. We know that many people in our city have connections across the Middle East, and our thoughts are with everyone who's concerned for friends and family. But we know this is a crisis whose resonance spreads beyond those just directly affected, as we mourn the loss of so much civilian life over the last 6 weeks, from the October 7th terrorist attacks to the ongoing conflict and humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Our focus as a council has been here in Westminster on supporting local people at a time of heightened community pressures and anxieties. In the immediate aftermath of October the 7th, I and my colleagues visited a number of synagogues, mosques and community organisations to show and support and hear from faith and community leaders about what support the council could provide. We've actively promoted the DEC charity appeals on the humanitarian crisis in Gaza and provided a range of resources around hate crime awareness through the council's comms channels. We've facilitated a meeting of the London Jewish Forum and the Metropolitan Police to address specific community concerns. And we've been in regular contact with the MPS to ensure the safety of sensitive locations, including places of worship and community buildings, ensuring extra resources are in place, with the council providing what additional assistance is required. And we're also supporting the police and other partners in the management of the protests that are taking place in central London, whilst remaining clear that any decisions around operation of protests rest with the Metropolitan Police.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And how will the council seek to build on these efforts in the coming months?
Thank you very much. We have seen, as was alluded to in the opening remarks from the Leader of the Opposition, we've seen a deeply worrying rise in anti-Semitism, Islamophobia and other forms of hatred across Westminster and across London and across the country. And we absolutely want to do what we can to make sure everyone feels safe in our city. Our communities team are exploring ways to build on and improve education around anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, alongside a more sustained approach to tackling hate crime in the city, with the council helping at the heart of that. I've been actively supporting the work of the Faith Exchange, very capably led by Ruth Bush, and we're continuing to provide a touch point for faith leaders across the city about hearing from ongoing concerns they have, and to provide a forum for information sharing. As part of this, we'll reach out to local schools to offer support, including making specialist support available for children and families in distress. We're also very conscious that as the conflict develops, these community tensions are likely to persist. We will do what we can in our communities, speaking regularly with them and escalating to other agencies and partners for additional support and providing reassurance and helpful information where needed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Hogg. May I ask Councillor Rigby to ask his question,
Thank you,
please?
Lord Mayor. Lord Mayor, question for the Cabinet Member for Planning and Economic Development. Is Westminster open for business when it comes to welcoming developers to invest in our borough? I only ask that question because once again a major planning subcommittee has been cancelled.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yes, Westminster is open for business, but we do need the planning applications to come in from the development industry. And as you know, we're at a historically very low level, primarily due to the very high interest rates that we've got that are making the cost of capital too high to invest. So we are very much open for business. We very much welcome more applications, so please send them in.
Supplementary, Lord Mayor. I welcome that he says that actually Westminster is open. Can he explain, therefore, why members on the Labour side at a recent major planning subcommittee, especially the ward councillor who sits on this committee, roundly rejected a highly sustainable and exemplar design scheme in Soho Square, which our planning officers, sustainable officers and the GLA supported, and which would have brought a wide range of public benefits? Does this simply not tell any developer considering to invest millions into Westminster not to bother and to take their investment elsewhere?
Thank you, Councillor. You should know better than to ask me that question. That's a question for the Chair of the Planning Committee, who you have the opportunity to address a question to. So maybe you'd like to get up and ask it again, but direct it to Councillor Bush.
I can I, Lord Mayor?
In the past, they just stood up and answered.
May I ask the Chair of Planning?
Councillor Bush.
Councillor Bush, you heard my question.
I did indeed. Thank you. As you know, Councillor Rigby, since you served on that committee, it was a complex case. It wasn't a dismissal of the intent, and there was certainly no indication whatsoever that businesses were unwelcome. It's a very false interpretation of the outcome, which was agonised over by all members, well, actually, particularly on the majority party side. They thought about it very thoroughly. There were design issues. There was a question of location. The proposal had its merits, but it was the wrong place for that particular application.
Absolutely right.
And all applications are considered thoroughly on their merits under my chairmanship. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bush. Councillor Eagleton, would you like to ask your question, please?
My question is to the Cabinet Member for City Management and Air Quality. Several residents on the Churchill Gardens estate have contacted me about the rollout of cycle hangers and bike racks on the estate, particularly outside Coleridge House and Campbell House. I've raised this with council officers. They've assured me they'll be part of the next rollout phase. I'd like confirmation of when the next rollout phase will be.
Thank you, Councillor Eagleton. We have already got capacity for 102 bikes in the bike hangers on the Churchill Gardens estate, where capacity is running at 83.3%. So there are some vacant spaces which we hope will be taken up soon. But we are looking at other locations on Churchill Gardens, including Coleridge House and Campbell House, as well as a number of others, which I won't read out now, but I will be happy to pass on to you later. We hope that the next rollout will be the next couple of months, when we have undertaken consultation, as we do with all bike hangers, and no doubt as a ward councillor, you will, along with your fellow ward councillors, be informed when those consultations are taking place.
I don't have a supplement.
No supplementary? No. Thank you. Councillor Hitchcock, would you care to ask your question?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. My question is to the Leader of the Council. In the past, Cabinet members have reported on their respective portfolios and taken questions from councillors face-to-face, in person, 5 times a year at scrutiny meetings. Now they are only required to appear twice a year. Can you explain how this drastic reduction of scrutiny will improve the democratic oversight process?
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I mean, that ultimately is a question for the Chair of Scrutiny, who runs the independent scrutiny function of the Council. In terms of what I'm aware of the reforms to scrutiny, based on an independent expert report looking at best practice across the country, there have been a series of recommendations that adapt the way in which Cabinet members are involved in the scrutiny process, focusing on depth and getting to grips with detailed areas of policy, as I believe Councillor Piddock has set out on multiple occasions. And there will be a range of other different mechanisms whereby Cabinet members will be taking questions from all members of the Council through a series of special meetings set up for that. But the Cabinet members will be actively involved in the scrutiny committees, focusing on the details of their policy rather than providing sort of using the scrutiny forum as the opportunity for the updates of what they've been doing over the last 6 months, which is obviously which is going to be picked up by those other meetings. But the fundamental point is, we opened up the scrutiny process in Westminster to expert advice from around the country, and the chairs of scrutiny have gone away and looked at that report and are implementing those findings. I think the key thing is that we need to find multiple different ways for Cabinet members to be engaged, and particularly so that members can get an opportunity to talk in depth about the policy work that they're undertaking.
Supplementary question, please. Now that the Leader must appear at scrutiny meetings 6 times a year instead of twice a year previously, how will you reassure your fellow councillors, and as importantly, Westminster residents, including my residents in Knightsbridge and Belgravia, that you will be across every aspect of every Cabinet member's portfolio, and you will be able to answer all members' questions as thoroughly and competently, or not, as your Cabinet members?
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I will endeavour to answer the questions that are put to me, and I will do my best to provide written responses where I am not able to provide them. I do take issue. I mean, I have already been attending more than 2 a year sessions through the previous scrutiny commission process. I've been attending many of them, so I'm not quite sure where you got 2 from. But obviously, its role is adapting as part of the new structures. And again, the fundamental point is there will be multiple different ways for Cabinet members to be held to account by all members of the Council. And again, we have followed best practice advice to reform a system of scrutiny that wasn't working as well as it could have been in recent times. I believe that was something that was agreed by all sides of the chamber. And obviously we had we've got to learn from best practice elsewhere. But please be reassured that there will be multiple opportunities to hold cabinet members to account and to get into the depth of policy. And I will endeavour to do my best to answer the questions that are put to me in any forum.
May I ask Councillor Albert if she'd like to ask her question?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. My question is for the Cabinet Member for Adult Social Care, Public Health and Voluntary Sector. What support is the Council giving to the voluntary sector, and has this improved since Labour have come to power in Westminster?
Could you please read out your questions?
Thank you very much for the question. So, when we came into power, there was one fund for the voluntary sector, one grant fund. That was the Community Priorities Fund that had been set up in election year, the year before. It was for 300,000. Since we've come to power, we have now 3 separate funds. The Community Priorities Fund has doubled, so it's now 600,000 instead of 300. And we have 2 other funds. We'll see. We have the core funding grant that's starting on the 20th of November, and that is a 3-year grant fund. Organisations can apply for up to 15k a year if their annual expenditure is under 200k, or up to 30,000 a year if their annual expenditure is up to 450k. And this fund, as I said, will be open on Monday, and the money will be given out by the next April. We have already closed the funding, which was the Healthy Communities Fund, funded by Public Health. That was, again, £3 million over 3 years. We've received 86 different applications. Unfortunately, they will not all be able to be funded, so fewer than half will be funded. But so overall, the amounts that we're giving out are 2 funds of £3 million each, and an annual fund of 600k, which is the community priorities. So I think I would say that the support to the voluntary sector has been completely revolutionised as a result. And the reason for this is it goes back to our commitment to 2035 about halving the life expectancy gap between the richest and the poorest people in our communities. And that is the purpose of this funding. It's to reduce health inequalities and to improve the health and well-being for the people of Westminster.
Thank you, Councillor Thalasis Butler. Now I'd like to ask Councillor Swaddle. Thank you.
Lord Mayor. My question is to the Leader of Council. Firstly, I'd like to thank the administration for flying the Israeli flag after the terrible Hamas attacks. Would the Leader join me and my group in condemning the terrible terrorist attacks, and also confirm that he and his members fully back Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer in their stance to support Israel's right to defend itself?
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your question. We have set out our commitment to tackling anti-Semitism here in Westminster, and I've spoken on multiple occasions about our focus on supporting our communities in the wake of those horrific terrorist attacks. It is clear that this is not a forum where we are going to be taking positions on the details of foreign policy. Ultimately, that is a matter for Parliament, and they're debating that tonight. Our focus is here on our communities in Westminster.
I'll take that as a worrying no. Many of our Jewish residents are now afraid to come into central London. What is the council doing to ensure that every citizen can come into the centre of London and not fear attack during the demonstrations?
We have been working very...
Given the recent events and flag flying, etc., Councillor Hogg will answer, but I'm just saying.
Lord Mayor, absolutely. The protection of our residents in Westminster is an absolutely essential part of what we do as a council. Ultimately, our role is to support the Metropolitan Police in the work that they do, and to use our work of our Public Protection and Communities Department to do that. We have been, as I said in my opening remarks, working very closely with the representatives of the jury
all the time because basically they can't see anything. So what actions will be taken to actually rectify this dreadful, dismal situation for the residents in the lower flats?
Thank you for your question, Councillor Wilkinson. I know that our teams are working with Russell House and they've had lots of problems from 2021 regarding their major works and actually probably beyond. I will speak to our officers and find out exactly what we're going to do about that and get back to you within the next week.
Thank you. Supplementary. Will the Cabinet member commit to reviewing the situation and for the residents of Russell House by the end of this calendar year and report back to us on whether she considers that the residents are being treated fairly?
It's your fault I didn't get the last bit of the question. Sorry, I didn't get the last bit of your question, but we're reviewing all our major works and we're reviewing the way our major works is carried out, from the billing process, from the engagement process, and reviewing every single 71 projects that we've got right now. I will get back to you. I will not make a commitment right now because I do not want to overpromise, but I will get back to you on Russell House.
I look forward to hearing from you.
Never overpromised yet.
Thank you very much. That is the end of time allowed for questions. On to agenda item 9, councillor issue. I call Councillor Robert Eagleton to speak on his chosen topic of affordable housing in Pimlico and Westminster.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. High quality and affordable housing of all tenures forms the bedrock of a decent society. It provides dignity, security, and the foundation on which communities can thrive. Tragically, across the United Kingdom, Westminster is the most expensive city to live in, and the dead hand of the affordable housing crisis weighs heavily on our residents, causing them financial distress, anxiety, and robbing them of their futures. In my own ward, Pimlico South, the average house price is over 21 times the average household income. This, coupled with soaring interest rates and a cost of living crisis, has eroded the social fabric of our community. For leaseholders, the dream of home ownership has turned into a living nightmare, with many forced to take on large mortgages to live in the city they love. Private renters are haunted by rising rents, having less to spend on enjoying life and finding it impossible to save for a place of their own. And our social housing tenants are trapped in overcrowded accommodation, unable to exercise their right to buy because despite the subsidies offered, they still cannot afford to buy their own home. Many of my residents, whether they are leaseholders, social housing tenants, or private renters, are kept awake at night by the same fears, that same sinking feeling in the pit of their stomach. How can I afford my bills and housing costs? Will I ever be able to start a family in Westminster? And will life always be this difficult? As a council, we have an obligation to tackle the housing crisis. And while the supply of housing is influenced by variables outside of our control, such as interest rates and the action, or rather inaction, of central government, this administration has taken significant steps in partnership with Sadiq Khan to deliver the affordable housing our city desperately needs. And the party opposite have recently mentioned key worker housing at full council. Well, as a key worker myself, I can tell them that the best way to support key workers is to back the plans of this administration. But I won't hold my breath, Lord Mayor, but stranger things have happened, not least the minority party's apparent Damascene conversion to ardent housing activists. That's right, the party that gave us the votes for home scandal, an illegal allocations policy, and which presided over severe maladministration by allowing a newborn baby to lie in damp and mould, now wants us to forget the last 65 years of Tory rule and believe that they're the party of decent, affordable housing. Well, it won't work, Lord Mayor. They may want to retrofit their reputation on housing, but the residents of Westminster have surveyed their rotten legacy And on the 5th of May last year, they opted for demolition. And now this administration is bulldozing away the city for nobody, the vested interests, and the years of Tory prejudice to deliver the affordable housing our residents need. As of March 2022, before we took office, the council had secured £57 million from the Greater London Authority for its housing redevelopments. Today, that figure stands at £147 million. That's right, by working with the Mayor of London, we have secured an additional £90 million for the delivery of affordable homes. And what does that money mean? It means we're projected to deliver 1,759 affordable homes by the end of 2036, 206 more than was planned under the Conservatives. And these aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. Each unit of affordable housing is a lifeline for our residents, a chance to start a family, live with security, or simply enjoy more of what life has to offer by spending less of their income on rent. When we build affordable homes, we also build communities and give residents their futures back. And so, can I invite the Cabinet Member with responsibility for regeneration and renters to provide further detail on this administration's plans to deliver affordable housing?
Thank you, Councillor Eggleston. I call Councillor Matt Noble to reply.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Eagleton. I think you've covered in quite a lot of detail the Council's plans for delivery of affordable housing, but I'll add what I can. I think we should all be aware in the Chamber of the challenges that we face in providing truly affordable housing for our residents in Westminster. And I think we also have to accept that the market has failed when it comes to the affordability of housing, not just here, but in many parts of the UK. Countries up and down the family, or rather families up and down the country, are in overcrowded homes or paying far more than they can afford on rent or mortgage payments, or are simply unable to and are being forced from their homes. Some issues are certainly exacerbated by our position as the capital of the capital. We knew this coming into May 2022, which made it all the more important to explore all avenues for additional funding from the Mayor's office for all of the Council's development sites, but particularly for the two major estate regeneration schemes in Church Street and Ebrew Bridge, that by having resident ballots, as you alluded to. The scarcity of available land and the huge demand at all tenure types and price points and insufficient regulation of things like short-term lets are all major hurdles to overcome. Councillor Eagleton, you gave us the statistics already, but being able to deliver more of the truly affordable homes that we need has been a very pleasing change that we were able to make to the Council's development programme. In Pimlico, in the Pimlico area, we look forward to Ebrew Phase 1 finishing in Q3 of next year, followed by Balmoral in Q4 of next year, all providing much needed housing. And more broadly looking at the Council's near-term pipeline, we were recently cited as being number 2 in the top 50 council house builders in 2022 to 2023 by Inside Housing. The Council can only be responsible for a portion of the homes being built in the city, however, and we all have to accept that allowing developers the unfettered ability to build what they want without contributing the policy-compliant level of affordable housing does nothing to solve the city's housing crisis. Super prime flats don't inject the kind of supply into the market which sates demand for reasonably priced flats, and so prices remain astronomical for people with modest budgets. High interest rates and high prices mean people who would otherwise be moving into home ownership are stuck in the private rented sector, which creates supply issues for tenants, causing the type of rent rises that we've seen over the last year or so. The over-commodification of housing is the prime example of profit over people in this country. The only tenure type which addresses this comprehensively is social housing, which is why we've reprioritised this in our own schemes and why we want to reprioritise it in the affordable housing portions delivered by private developers. At a national level, much more needs to be done, and leadership has been poor. Since I joined the Cabinet last May, there have been 6 housing ministers in Parliament. We look forward to the next government taking it much more seriously. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Noble. We now move on to the remaining agenda items: party business, report for full council and notice of motion. The topics selected for debate and the names of those down to speak were tabled on the order paper sent to all earlier this week. Each speaker has up to 5 minutes. Agenda item 10, party business. The majority group have selected the topic evening and nighttime environment for debate as their business this evening. This is set out in the order paper. I now call Councillor Aisha to open the debate.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm very pleased to take the opportunity this evening to set out the progress we've made towards developing inaugural evening and nighttime strategy for our city, which we've dubbed Westminster After Dark. I'd also like to acknowledge my colleagues, Councillor Barraclough, Councillor Fisher and Councillor Less, who are leading on this work alongside me. They'll speak tonight about their areas of focus, economic benefits, cumulative impact, and young people and women's safety, respectively. In developing this strategy, I want to make it clear from the outset that we are committed to making it work for everyone. After all, Fairer Westminster in Action is all about catering to the diverse needs, aspirations and desires of our communities, visitors and businesses. Westminster's vibrant nighttime economy is world famous for its social and cultural benefit to London and draws in millions here every year. From the West End theatres to the vibrancy of Old Crompton Street, our museums, our restaurants and music venues are all integral to the history and character of our city. Although the importance of the visitor economy cannot be understated for residents and businesses that make up the industry, the other side of that coin is the arrival of up to 1 million people per day into Westminster, both tourists and office workers, is not without significant challenges for us as a local authority. We want to secure a future of our evening and nighttime economy and allow it to flourish, but it must be able to coexist with our residents' right to quiet enjoyment of their homes. That's why we've kicked off our 6-month engagement, which will bring together as many opinions, desires and expectations as possible about what Westminster should be between the hours of 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. As part of this exercise, we're thinking beyond the West End and catering different offers for different areas of our city. What residents will want in Pimlico might be different from our residents in Maida Vale, and we will give them a voice to tell us what that is. There are lots of different ways for people to engage during this cumulative impact assessment consultation through Commonplace, our nighttime stakeholder assembly, which will help steer the policy. We want to bring people together to collaborate and design the space for them. It's not up to the council to our stakeholders want, but we're asking everyone to consider 4 main themes: safety and security, and how we can improve safety and feelings of safety between the hours of 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. Number 2, community and culture, how we can further empower and celebrate our diverse communities and our culture. Economic opportunities, how do we support the successful economic enhancement of Westminster's evening and night time whilst ensuring the needs and desires of the whole community are considered. And lastly, accessible and positive places. How can we ensure Westminster's evening and night time is accessible to all and provides a positive impression as a place? Lord Mayor, sadly, I hung up my dancing shoes years ago, but I hope by the end of this debate we will be in a place where we can design something for everyone in Westminster After Dark. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tim Mitchell.
Lord Mayor, thank you. I start by declaring that I'm a member of the Licensing Committee, and anything I say today is not to predetermine my decisions in the future, firstly on the cumulative impact assessment and then the licensing policy. Lord Mayor, I've had the privilege to represent for a number of years St James's Ward alongside my colleagues Louise Hyams and Mark Shearer.
Here, here.
We have the second largest number of licensed premises in Westminster, which colleagues will know is the largest licensing authority in the country. Also, like Councillor Hyams and Karen Scarborough, who will be speaking later in this debate, I have sat on many a licensing subcommittee. This included a year as the chairman of licensing when I had the privilege to succeed our late colleague and licensing expert Audrey Lewis in 2015. We were told on the 3rd of April by Councillor Less and Councillor Barraclough at the launch of Westminster After Dark that it would be a 5-month engagement with the city's residents, businesses, visitors and communities to inform the Council's first ever evening and nighttime plan. And thank you, Councillor Less, for further clarification about that engagement process. Of course, buried in the detail of the Westminster After Dark website, it reveals why the Council is undertaking this exercise. The Mayor of London's Nighttime Commission recommended in their final report in January 2019 that the Mayor should produce a nighttime guidance for boroughs. This guidance is to help boroughs develop holistic nighttime strategies that cover all aspects of what happens in their central areas between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. Many of these mayoral nighttime initiatives are under the auspices of Amy LeMay, the Mayor's nighttime czar, or as Councillor Devonshire would say, Night Mayor. This Westminster After Dark plan, for us, is going to be published, we hear, in June 2024 and will produce clearer guidance on noise management, street lighting, planning and licensing policies and antisocial behaviour strategies. Of course, colleagues will know that this plan will not all be new, as we already have detailed planning and licensing policies, but I understand the focus of this plan should bring on specific evening and nighttime issues. I'm not sure why it's been chosen to have this debate so early in the consultation process, rather than the colleagues being asked to comment on the guidance just before it's published in June, but all the same, this is an opportunity for myself and my colleague Councillor Scarborough to comment. Much of the areas to include the plan falls under Councillor Less's public protection portfolio. Other aspects fall under Councillor de Moderberg. For example, safe lighting is essential for keeping people safe and constant vigilance is needed. For example, only last night there was a lighting audit in Leicester Square which revealed that at least 6 lights were not working, and of course this is a great concern because Leicester Square is the centre of much of the late night crime in the West End. Switching from Councillor de Moderberg's portfolio to Councillor Barraclough's portfolio, another essential element will be to ensure new public realm schemes are designed in a way that improves and protects public safety at night. Taking the advice from the police in the design of these public realm schemes is essential. The same applies to planning applications, both large and small. Another aspect of planning policy is setting out the Council's aspirations for the use of the building in the future. And it's important that we shouldn't have a one-size-fits-all policy across the whole city. For example, protection of pubs. Whilst the northern part of Westminster is important, in the more residential areas of cities where landowners might want to take advantage of the better returns from residential use of a property to convert them from pubs. And that's why it was right that the Conservative administration required the Carlton Tavern in Maida Vale to be rebuilt brick by brick. However, the West End is not lacking in pubs. So I think it was wrong for planning officers to recommend for approval a recent application to convert a Covent Garden restaurant into a Wetherspoons pub, and it was right for a planning subcommittee to refuse the application. Lord Mayor, I look forward to seeing the results of the public engagement on Westminster After Dark after the consultation. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Eamon Less, slightly out of order, but not just running order, not out of order. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'll start. Unlike my mum, my dancing shoes are still on my feet, so we certainly differ. Since becoming a nighttime champion and my short but very insightful experience on licensing committee, the damning evidence around why Westminster After Dark couldn't come sooner was quite alarming. There's often a notion to suggest that young people sprint to the likes of the West End to hit the club or engage in ASB, and this just simply isn't true. Now, I know it isn't true because as a young person who does enjoy the nighttime economy in our city, I can tell you that our offering is truly one of the greatest in the world. There is a great respect for the various offerings that you can do after dark, such as immersive art exhibitions, exploring culinary experiences, theatres and shows, dancing, live music, all for things like Christmas get-togethers, weddings, and awkward first dates, to which I've had one too many. The 6-month engagement plan brings in young people to the table. Young people who are our residents, young people who want alternative drinking options, young people who have young families, young people who want dinner later, young people who want to professionally network, young people who work remotely here, and the list goes on and on. Westminster After Dark will help to shape the way that young people view the wider offering in Westminster in some of our beautiful high streets, independent restaurants and cafes. I'm pleased to see that we are taking things like pedicab seriously, and that is thanks to and the help of the MP Nikki Aiken as well. And I'm pleased to see that we're thinking of our visitors. I'm pleased to see that we are accommodating to late night workers. I'm pleased to see that we will be leading on accessibility and inclusivity, and I'm pleased that this plan will soon come to life. Lord Mayor, I'd also like to focus on how Westminster After Dark can help to shape our policy around violence against women and girls. The myth that women should not go out late at nights is just simply outrageous. Women should not have to restrict their day-to-day lives to be safe. When looking at sexual offences statistically, St James's Ward and the West End Ward experience high concentrations of said offences and have some of the highest in the whole of London. For many women and girls, going out at night is something approached with some caution, ensuring forward planning on how and where to travel to be safe. Whilst it is sensible to plan ahead, the disproportionate attacks against women, even when doing so, should not be the norm. Westminster After Dark will look at how we look to work with our businesses to have appropriately trained staff who are proactive and vigilant around women's safety at night. This includes accurate capturing of information and report to the police where appropriate. We need to ensure we are empowering women with the correct safety information and clear guidance to confidently use all public spaces. We also need to ensure that planning and the built environment factor in and support women's safety at night, recognising good practice to broaden them to cover all public spaces. Lord Mayor, it is not right that when I go home at night, my keys are carefully placed to loop onto my finger, and I always have headphones in without playing anything as a disguise, and I know that I'm not alone. Many women and girls experience low-level harassment in London on a daily basis to the point where they felt it was a normalised part of living in a city. We can and must do better in Westminster. Our Night Stars volunteers, for example, are integral to helping policing on Friday nights in the West End. And as someone who does volunteer, the sexual harassment that I have witnessed is nothing short of disturbing. How is it right that women waiting for an Uber are harassed? Or how is it right that women walking to Tottenham Court Road station are stalked? How is it right that a nurse leaving for food in the middle of her night shift be sexually assaulted? And how is it right that volunteers are a necessary part of nightlife to help combat violence against women and girls? I'm proud that these voices are being heard in this new strategy and are not being dismissed or disregarded. Westminster After Dark will work with all partners and help to support venues, operators and good businesses to do their bit to help make sure that women and girls feel safe, whether they're on the bus, at work or enjoying a night out. Lord Mayor, I will leave you with a few short statistics. A case is more likely to be no crimed, meaning no further action will be taken if the accuser is from a global majority, has mental health problems or has learning disabilities. A case is less likely to be reported if the victim has uncertain immigration status. Around 1/3 of both female and male victims of sexual assaults have a pre-existing mental health issue. A woman with learning disabilities is at an increased risk of abuse and is less likely to proceed through the criminal justice service to see the conviction of the offender. 21% of women who have experienced extensive sexual abuse have also experienced homelessness. And more than 50% of women and men involved in the sex trade suffer from assaults. Lord Mayor, Westminster After Dark is necessary, and I am proud to be part of this initiative. Thank you.
Councillor Paul Fisher.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I'd be lying if I said the phrase cumulative impact was a hot topic in the bars and restaurants of the City of Westminster. It is a very peculiar form of statutory jargon that doesn't really roll off the tongue. But cumulative impact as a concept is designed to deal with the issues and capture the issues with which all of us as councillors, particularly in the City of Westminster, are familiar. We know what the negative externalities are from an over-concentration of licensed premises in any part of our city. And when Parliament legislated in 2003 for the new regime, when it legislated for powers with licensing authorities to undertake cumulative impact assessments, it was recognising that on occasion, in England and Wales, there were instances of over-concentration of licensed premises that meant that every additional licence that was granted would inhibit the licensing authority's ability to comply with and advance the licensing objectives. When Councillor Toll and Councillor Lilly were knocking on doors in advance of the May 2022 elections in the West End, just to take it as a snapshot, we were hearing of a similar trend. Sleep deprivation, crime, defecation and urination in social housing and on doorsteps. And of course, it's important to remember that in a place like Soho, 1/3 of housing is social housing. So we must recognise that many instances in which these negative externalities occur are evidence of a disproportionate impact on a certain group within our community here in the city. And I'm afraid what we heard then was that under the previous administration, licensing policy had got out of control. There was no sense of getting back control, but worse than that, and I'm just speaking about what we've heard on the doorstep, and we're testament to that because you now have 3 Labour councillors in the West End. We were hearing that not only had the council lost control, but it was turning a blind eye to the issues that were faced by many residents. That it actually deprioritised the concerns of residents because, let's face it, it had been in power for some 60 years and was prioritising commercial interests. And Councillor Devonish, I've only been here for 18 months, and even I can see you're a parody of yourself. The problem is, I think, having 2 jobs sometimes confuses you about which forum you're in. But I'm sure in 2024, one of my colleagues here will be able to allow you to resign from your position and relieve you of your duties. What's really important to bear in mind here, when we look at licensing in the heart of our city, is that it's not just about the West End. When we look at the cumulative impact assessment that officers have undertaken this year, we can also see other hotspots, areas of special interest. We can see in Queensway, we can see in Paddington and Edgware Road, that there are areas where we need to be taking a greater interest in. But what we do have is fresh data. We can see that 9% of all crime in London is committed in the City of Westminster. 6% of all crime in London is committed in 2 wards, the West End and St James's. And it's important that we at least acknowledge the problem with our subcommittees and in our reports to subcommittees going forward. What is the cumulative impact assessment? Fundamentally, it's about fresh data. What it isn't is a change in policy in and of itself. It isn't also the remarking of the zone, the cumulative impact zone, in and of itself. But in due course, the assessment and this new data can inform a better cumulative impact zone and better licensing policy. But in the interim, we can use this fresh data on subcommittees, applicants, objectors, and also those who are making decisions to make sure we're making the best decisions for residents and businesses alike. And I'd implore everybody here to make sure that you're making use of the fresh data when you are considering the application of licensing policy, not just in the West End, but throughout the City of Westminster. So generally, I think the cumulative impact assessment is the start of an important process. We are on one road, and there are lots of factors to take into account when we look at the City of Westminster after dark. But this cumulative impact assessment and this new data will help subcommittees make fairer decisions and also, I hope, allow for applicants to respond fairly to the problem at the heart of our city. Thank you.
Councillor Karen Scarborough.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Well, unlike Councillor Fisher, I have sat on licensing for quite a number of years, including latterly chairing a licensing subcommittee, and I firmly believe this is one of the fairest things that I have done in my life. I still continue to sit as a member of a licensing subcommittee, and I don't propose to say anything that will prejudice my decision on the Westminster After Dark policy. Whilst approximately 250,000 residents live in Westminster, the population, as somebody's mentioned, swells to over 1 million people working and visiting Westminster with its attractions, which we all know what they are. We clearly need to initiate a policy that supports inclusive, sustainable, safe, accessible and an economically successful city, and that meets the needs of residents, visitors, workers and businesses. I would like to point out, you didn't think we've done very much, it was this council that introduced core hours, and I know you know what they are. So you've mentioned the cumulative impact assessment area. I'd just like to mention, you have described it a bit, but I would just say that obviously, as you mentioned, it is about the stress that having a number of licensed premises in a concentrated area has on the 4 licensing objectives under the Licensing Act of 2003. They are namely prevention of crime and disorder, promotion of public safety, prevention of nuisance and prevention of children from harm. Now, a licensing hearing, for those that don't know, is very much a balancing act, listening to the concerns of residents, complying with the Council's licensing policy and the Licensing Act of 2003, whilst supporting our businesses, which make a large contribution to our economy. More often than not, it's about reaching a compromise with the applicant and with conditions being attached to a licence to mitigate any residents' concerns and ensure a business operates to promote the 4 licensing objectives. A cumulative impact assessment, which has just been done, examines the available data to establish if the presence of licensed premises in certain areas has had a cumulative impact. And the types of evidence used are typically licensing data, police data, environmental health complaints, and ambulance call-outs. As regards the data in the recent cumulative impact assessment, I do wonder if there is a bit of an issue. Many residents have reported fatigue. We're constantly asking them to report rubbish issues with their streets, public nuisance. In regard to public nuisance, even though the issues such as crime and public nuisance and breaches of licensing conditions can be reported after the event to the police or to the council, this may not be happening and not being reflected in the data. I certainly believe this to be the case in Marylebone and the Hyde Park ward, and may be true of other areas. In Marylebone, our residents are living in streets surrounding Edgware Road, and they've been experiencing issues in relation to premises both licensed and unlicensed on Edgware Road, but we are actively encouraging our residents to report any issues. In Westminster, there are 4,045 licences issued, 30% in the West End. The assessment states an analysis of crime and other indicators of alcohol disorder are even more pronounced at night. Robbery, for example, is concentrated by time, and the police tell us this all the time, with 70% between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. However, that still leaves 70% of licensed premises throughout Westminster. Notably, Westminster is the 4th highest crime volume of community safety partnership area in England and Wales. It has the highest crime volumes and crime rate per 1,000 population. Now, unfortunately, and I know you weren't around then, when the last cumulative impact assessment was carried out, it was around the end of COVID, therefore with a distinct lack of data. So obviously we know premises were closed, people weren't going out to eat, and as a result, both Queensway and Edgware Road had their status of being in the cumulative impact area removed and renamed areas of special consideration, which basically means applicants for a premises licence have to meet a lower standard than the cumulative impact area. Again, as I believe there's underreporting, it'd be good to see Edgware Road and Queensway reinstated in the cumulative impact area. Although the cumulative impact assessment has recently been published, following work undertaken in the spring and summer of 2023, the consultation only ended on Sunday the 12th. So I wish to reiterate, whilst I sit in a main licensing committee, I've not predetermined my position and I await the results of the consultation, but I do think that this item on the agenda is extremely premature. Yes. I welcome the outcome, I really do, of the Westminster After Dark, and whilst the results of the cumulative impact assessment will feed into the consultation of the Westminster After Dark, this is even more premature because this consultation goes on till July 2024. So I think it's great that we're doing it, but I honestly can't see the point of having this in this council meeting. We could be looking at more important things. Not that this isn't important, but there's nothing, we can't say anything because we can't comment on it, otherwise it will prejudice the outcome. So really this should have been after this.
I really have to stop.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Barclay.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. World-class cities need world-class nightlife. It's one reason why the finest global companies choose to locate here. It's one reason why bright and ambitious young people still flock to London, and one reason why many of us live here too. It's certainly why I came to London. When I was a student at Warwick, I was a very popular student because I had a car. And one evening, some friends got me to drive them from Coventry to Soho, and we saw Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers, both sets, left at 3 a.m, coffee at Bar Italia, and I thought there was nowhere else I'd rather live than Frith Street. And I still kind of don't, although what Councillor Fisher was telling me, maybe I need to change my mind about my favourite street in Westminster. But the West End's remarkable offer of great theatre, music, food, drink and camaraderie is the canvas on which dreams are built. And it employs 160,000 people in the evenings, generating £14 billion of value add, 100 commercial galleries, 53 music venues, 39 theatres, 4 casinos, actually 3 casinos, 11 dance venues and 3 world-leading art institutions. Yet nobody thinks the authorities, including this council, are doing a particularly good job of managing the city after dark. Visitors complain of the crowds and the crime, the lack of public toilets, venues closing too early. Where is the cafe culture and al fresco dining, they say? Others highlight the demise of live music, the challenge of finding late night jazz. And Council Lily tells us we're losing LGBTQ plus venues too. Yeah. Businesses complain we make it hard for them to invest, difficult for them to create new and exciting experiences for their customers. Too much bureaucracy with licensing and planning, too many restrictions. And workers complain about the cost of getting home after their shift, of the risk of crime, that useful shops don't open late 24/7, the lack of hot food to eat after their shifts. And residents complain of the noise, the ASB and the air quality, of the rapid and uncontrolled conversion of retail to restaurants following the government's deregulation, of the lighter touch controls we have now for pavement dining, and the inability of the police to keep a lid on muggings and street urination. I think they've all got a point, because living in the West End has become much less pleasant, opening a business rather harder, and it's still almost impossible to get a good steak after midnight. So that's why we've launched Westminster After Dark, this 5-month engagement exercise. The reason for the debate tonight is we thought we want to hear what you guys have to say. This is our attempt to reconcile the many and varied and often competing interests in the city. The businesses want to entertain their customers and make money. The visitors want to have fun and get home safely. And residents want to sleep soundly in their beds without being woken by someone using their doorway as a toilet. And Westminster After Dark, therefore, brings together these 2 work programmes into a single, unified attempt to strike a reasonable balance. The first work stream is the evening and nighttime strand of our Fair Economy Plan, looking at developing sustainable growth and good jobs. And the second is the cumulative impact assessment, which maps the crime, disorder and noise caused by the over-concentration of licensed premises. Now, although we're talking a lot about the West End, Westminster After Dark addresses all parts of our city and is much more than an exercise in licensing policy. For example, we need to consider the needs of children who might value a floodlit playground in Paddington Rec to keep them entertained on the way home from school in the winter, of delivery drivers in Bayswater who need public toilets, of residents of Knightsbridge plagued by noisy motorbikes. So we've already begun. The website's had 5,000 visitors. Take a look, maybe drop a pin on the map with your ideas. Then comes a series of discussion groups with the BIDs, resident groups, TfL, the police and council services, used to inform and plan a new innovation, this stakeholder assembly, grouping together residents, businesses and visitors to provide a framework of principles. The Assembly will be representative of the City, professionally facilitated and deliberate over 3 days in January. And based on all these inputs, surveys, discussion groups, the Assembly and the CIA will publish a draft set of policies, guidance and projects that we hope command a consensus. We're not going to please everyone. That's never possible, especially with an issue as contentious as this one. But we do hope to arrive at a clear and consistent roadmap that all stakeholders can accept as reasonable. A set of policies that businesses can use to decide how, where and when to invest without worrying about a late-stage rejection, and a set of policies our committees can use to give clear, quick and unambiguous decisions. So please get involved and help us build a city with world-class nightlife in which its residents can sleep soundly and everybody gets home safely.
Thank you, Councillor Bardlock. Thank you. I now call Councillor Less.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I actually disagree with the minority party this evening about how we're bringing this too early, because this is exactly why we want to bring it here. We want to bring it here as early as possible so everyone can get involved as soon as possible. Let me just give you some facts already, because we brought it very early, as you say. We've had 4,117 visitors to the site already. We've had 138 respondents. We've had 278 contributions. We've had 245 news subscribers. We've had 47% of respondents that are residents and 13% of respondents work in the borough. So actually, this is the perfect time, and we are bringing it back again. So, you know, we will keep the conversation going and, you know, watch this space. Thank you, anyway, to all the speakers. I think it's a really important issue. Westminster After Dark is here now. We need to do it as soon as possible. It's too late. I think being in the heart of the city, we need to get our priorities right for our residents, for our businesses, our economy, our, nighttime, our workers, everyone that comes to our city. We're keeping the conversations going. The buzz and the vibrancy of Soho owes a lot to its nighttime activities, including those that go on to early hours of the morning. No nighttime or nightlife after 11:30 where pubs close. I have to travel to the West End from Pimlico for any sign of nightlife. So again, we're getting the transport and the accessibility right. Many residents have been forced to move because of the noise from deliveries, waste collections, as across the chamber people have mentioned. And we've, sorry, I'm really cold. And like you, Councillor Scarborough, I've sat on licensing as well, so I know the importance of the CIA, and I know that we both sat alongside each other on many applications before. CIA always comes back to us over and over again. We need to have a balance of how we have some of those concentrated areas where we've got those licensed activities or particular types of premises that are open. And yeah, so sorry. I'm sorry, I'm just getting really cold now, sorry. Thank you, sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Less. That concludes the debate on the item chosen. Agenda item 13, notice of motion. The motion to be debated this evening has been submitted by the opposition party and is entitled Rough Sleeping. In agreement with both groups, the motion published has been slightly amended and is as listed on the order paper that was sent to all members earlier this week. A formal amendment will not be tabled. There will be a single debate on this motion, and I will then call the vote. As mentioned previously, the names of those down to speak are tabled on the order paper. Each speaker has up to 5 minutes. I now call Councillor David Harvey to move the motion.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you to everyone who's going to contribute. We're moving this motion as the drivers of hardship in rough sleeping are never still. Rough sleeping finds different and new ways of consuming people. You don't have to be George Orwell to understand that each rough sleeper is in a wasteland, literally at the bottom of the world. Whatever and whoever has failed, housing, community, support, health, choices or just bad luck, so that people sleep on the streets. Our agency as Westminster Council is here. As Westminster, we find that over half of London's rough sleepers flee here from whichever demons they flee from, and 97% of them have no local connection except to our conscience and our compassion. And so our services need constantly to improve. We say this constructively, calling for further focus, and we know this is difficult. Now, Lord Mayor, yesterday you met the rough sleeping team, I believe. You know how hard they work and the extraordinarily difficult work and challenges they meet. The latest Chain survey, which is the London-wide survey of rough sleeping, shows a 100 increase in rough sleeping in our area. And last year things looked brighter, now they look less so. It is time for the Council strategy, extended to 2022 and from 2022, to be reformed and replaced and refreshed for today. It's not enough to say, as the statement of intent says, well-meaning as it is, that there hasn't been time to update the plan. And also the city needs a decisive action plan for this winter. And why do I say that? Because quietly, charity partners have told me so. They're concerned about the statement of intent. They think it's time to move on. And it's not to attack outstanding work across the council. It's to face the challenges that we're going to meet. In today's post-pandemic world, Lord Mayor, our economy is dragged down by war. The pressures towards homelessness have increased significantly. New contaminated drugs spread across the streets. Until this year, I had not seen groups of men shaking, traumatised, in a drug-induced trance on Victoria Street. Now I can see them several times a week, and fentanyl, a great destroyer, will arrive if it's not already here. And stretched everywhere, there are no police. The new street team that's planned seems rather like the old one, but it will be too small to cope. Residents across Westminster are genuinely frightened. Or in the case of one elderly resident in my ward, bruised and battered, where a rough sleeper took a swing at her when she asked that person to move off her doorstep so she could get out. So here is the ask. Yes, finish the new strategy and get on with it, but it is now time to bring the partners together, charities, the police, every stakeholder, and to plan actively for this winter. There needs to be an immediate winter action plan, and it needs to involve everyone in discussion, and that's as much about culture as anything else. Don't lead this meeting, be follower leaders. Listen to and follow the third sector, show them how much you respect their expertise, and bring everyone together. Secondly, you've secured a lot of new funds, and well done for that. But how's it being used, and how can it best be used? Now, the third sector tells me it has money to deploy as well, and you can work with them on that. Spend some on frontline officers, and if the Mayor won't send more police, think about what else you can do so that help for rough sleepers can be done securely and safely. With the rough sleeping community, the police are often a social service, not an enforcement one. And look, buy in accommodation. You need a quick answer too for the new rough sleepers on our streets and near it. There are different approaches to borrow around the world, from Norway, from Finland, from Germany. I like the Vancouver New Leaf approach, which simply says to a rough sleeper, here is quite a large grant, £7,000 or £8,000, we'll give you the support, we'll get you back located in a home with a job. It works. Now, I'm not saying this is easy, but it is time to face up to the current challenges and the future ones. So it is time for action, that's what we ask of the administration. And do you know why? Whatever a rough sleeper is today, they've been somewhere else in their life, and they can be again. Each one of us should say hello, each one of us should make eye contact and smile. And when you see the saddest of those rough sleepers, just remember the solitary state that they've fallen into, and read some Orwell again. Lord Mayor, we have to bring every rough sleeper back to a civilised and happy life. We won't succeed in that, but we have constantly to up our efforts because this is where they come to, this is where they flee to. I beg to move the motion, Lord Mayor.
I now call Councillor Shearer to second the motion.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I firstly want to thank my colleague, Councillor Harvey, for introducing this important motion and also for the opposite whip for her support. This couldn't come at a more important time when the weather is getting colder and the number of rough sleepers are unfortunately increasing in our city. St James's Ward has some of the highest numbers of rough sleepers, not just in Westminster, but also London and the UK. I also want to personally thank our incredible officers who quite literally change people's lives and get them care and help they need. In the council, they get my Unsung Hero Award every day for their professionalism, compassion and ability to help hundreds, thousands of people every year. Whilst my colleagues might talk more about rough sleeping itself and the care required to bring people off the streets, I want to focus on two principal topics. The first is our need to protect and safeguard rough sleepers from crime and antisocial behaviour when they're in our care and our hostels. The second is the need to better manage the hostels so they can be more accountable within their local communities. Councillor Harvey has spoken about the need to support and empower agencies we work with in this area. The police, who do an amazing job, are 50% down on their numbers in St James's Ward. There are just 5 officers who cover an area from the Royal Courts of Justice to Hyde Park Corner to Victoria Station. Colleagues may be aware of the St James's Ward campaign Tim, Louise and I have started to recruit more police onto the streets, typically around Great Peter Street, behind Westminster Abbey. We have heard of and witnessed significant challenges which surround the local homelessness hostels in this area and the crime that has steadily been attracted around them. Loitering, drug dealing, drug taking, defecating, urinating, being in possession of intimidating dogs, arson, late night shouting, vandalism and intimidation have all been reported every week, yes, every week in this area. I'm incredibly proud of the role that hostels play within the homelessness strategy. Having volunteered and fundraised for one of those hostels on Great Peter Street, I know the vital role they play in our care pathways. But our homelessness strategies and care pathways must work side by side with the communities where they're located. And the clients of the hostels must be safeguarded. Louise and I had a shocking meeting a month ago. The head teacher of St Matthew's Primary School, located between 2 hostels, told us that her children were scared to go to school due to the extreme antisocial behaviour happening in their local streets. I feel incredibly privileged that some of the children in that Year 6 took the time to write to us counsellors. I promised I would share their stories here. Eden says, St Matthew's is an amazing location, but I'd like to report about how scary and disgusting the streets are. Some children go home alone and sometimes see homeless people fighting or shouting, and the children get scared. Grace says, before you read my letter, I'd just like to reassure you that I'm not trying to complain. I'm expressing my concern about the safety and well-being and future of my community. She goes on to say she is concerned about the younger pupils witnessing the large amount of use of drugs and vapes. Nathaniel says, I'm writing to you about bad things that have been happening near our local area. There are some drunk people who swear and argue. This makes me very scared and anxious because they might be rude or even try to hurt me. The alleyway is really disgusting with dog poo and rubbish. People should clear up their dog poo and keep their scary dogs on leads. Prince says, he starts by saying he's a member of the wonderful St Matthew's Primary School. He goes on to say, I really don't feel safe because of the alcoholics. This gives me anxiety because I've seen them be very aggressive. I've received equally moving and concerning letters from Leona, William, Matthew, Aidan, Isabel and Matthias. This evening I fulfilled a promise that I would represent the pupils of St Matthew's Primary School and raise their concerns. The hostels are such an important part of the care pathway, but they're also an important part of the local community with responsibilities to those local communities. From now on, as called for by Councillor Harvey, I'm asking for more safeguarding and enforcement around the hostels through empowering our pathway partners. I'm especially asking for more police to stop the drug dealers targeting the vulnerable hostel clients. I'm asking for us as a council to do everything we can within our powers to continue to improve our services in this crucial area. And in the case of St Matthew's School, I'm asking us to make our children feel safe again when they go to school. Thank you.
I now call Councillor Begum to speak, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Harvey, for bringing this very important topic to Council. Westminster has the highest number of rough sleepers in the country, and in the last year and a half, we have been working very closely with our partners. The numbers of rough sleepers is increasing across the board, driven up by this callous government on its knees. This ever-increasing demand puts pressure on council services across the country, with Tory councillors even calling for support from central government. We are currently developing our new homelessness and rough sleeping strategy. Our approach has always been to support people who are at their most vulnerable. We invest nearly 7 million annually to support rough sleepers with over 1,000 commissioned supported accommodation bed spaces. Our street outreach service with St Mungo's and Compass do vital work in identifying those that may be sleeping rough for the first time. Our street engagement team, assessment centres at Harrow Road and The Passage, our triage services, StreetLink and others work tirelessly in the borough to provide support at all times during the day. We provide specific women's services like the Marylebone Project, Women's Refuge, Solace and others, and also pre-employment and employment support, immigration support, drug and alcohol services, the Blue Light Project and Groundswell and countless others are support services that we put on in conjunction with our partners. However, the increasing pressures on us and our partners require support from central government. Yet whilst we work to support the most vulnerable, the former Home Secretary described rough sleeping as a lifestyle choice. As a local authority, we will always strive towards working with and for our residents, supporting the vulnerable and ensuring we are offering the best services possible. And while for most of us in this room, we wish for an end to rough sleeping, we have never been so far from it. As long as we have elected members in central government that would rather blame rough sleepers than genuinely look at our broken system and look at ways of preventing homelessness, we will continue to have rising numbers of rough sleepers. There are many solutions to prevent homelessness and rough sleeping, like investing in a National Housing First programme, which helps people into safe, secure housing with a wraparound service so people can remain off the streets. This is a model that has worked in so many countries across Europe. Denmark, for example, has achieved between 74% and 95% of people housed in 2009 to 2013 maintaining their housing. Rough sleepers are not a homogeneous group of people. Each individual needs tailored support, and it's time central government started to support local authorities through providing more funding, investing in mental health services. I mean, it was under a Tory administration we saw the closure of the Gordon Hospital, building more homes, and in the short term, lifting the cap on housing benefit so people can actually afford to rent. The motion from the opposition is certainly one none of us can disagree with, and as a local authority, we will work tirelessly to support rough sleepers. But will the opposition apply pressure on their government to do the right thing?
I now call Councillor Toll to speak, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Harvey and Shearer for moving this motion. I'm really glad to see that there's cross-party agreement on such an important issue. This is an issue of real interest to me, both personally and as a West End councillor. One of the first organisations I got involved in my community was Under One Sky, which run every weekend food and clothing delivery walks around Soho, Oxford Street and Embankment. And the commitment of the dedication of the volunteers there is truly inspiring. And as a West End councillor, we're acutely aware of this issue. Over the summer, my ward received national and global attention for the very visible increase in rough sleeping on Oxford Street. And Councillor Harvey and Councillor Begum have both mentioned the increases in numbers that we've seen. The cross-party London Councils group found that 4,068 people were found rough sleeping in London between July and September of this year. That was an increase of 12% on the same year and the highest quarterly figure since records began. 2,086 of these people, more than half, were sleeping rough for the first time. And of course, these figures don't include hidden homelessness and people living in insecure arrangements. As West End councillors, Councillor Fisher and Lily and I responded by coordinating work between the council, the third sector and the police to support people experiencing homelessness and also to reassure residents that we were proactively dealing with some of the antisocial behaviour issues that were arising as well. We're really proud of the history of our ward in tackling homelessness. The House of St Barnabas was founded in 1862 in Soho as a charity to help people experiencing homelessness, and up until 2006 was a hostel for women. It now raises awareness about issues of hidden homelessness in the area. And Centrepoint was also founded in Soho in 1969 to provide a safe night to sleep for young people. They're amongst the many amazing organisations that we have across the borough. And I also want to mention the Passage, which now is providing a model for councils and organisations across the country of the type of wraparound care that you can provide to support people trying to navigate really complex systems of housing, mental health, welfare, immigration, and even protection from domestic abuse. Now, while our voluntary sector are invaluable partners, they fill gaps to provide vital support, and we as a council can do much to alleviate the suffering of people experiencing homelessness and get them back on their feet. It is not sufficient to deal with the real root causes of rough sleeping on our streets. And Connections at St Martin's in the Field was very clear about what these reasons are, and they boil down to just a few things. First, a shortage of and lack of affordability of housing. In high-rent places like Westminster, this is particularly acute. The cost of living crisis that we're facing across the country with rising rents, mortgage rates, bills, food costs. Thirdly, stagnating wages. And fourth, a lack of support for people trying to move off street homelessness as a result of cuts to local authority budgets. Now, as the winter bites, we'll undoubtedly see pressures on individuals and families increase and the risk of homelessness increase. The Works and Pensions Committee have warned cost of living support payments will not be enough to support the magnitude of the problem. London Councils also warns that the increase in local housing without an increase in the local housing allowance, more than 60,000 people could become homeless by 2030. So we will only really be able to do something about this if we build more affordable homes, we take action to bring down the cost of living, and we improve the coordination around services like housing, substance abuse, and mental health. So, Lord Mayor, I hope that on both sides of this chamber, we can agree to praise the good work of our voluntary sector and our partnerships with them, but we can also commit to using our voices to highlight and identify the root causes of street homelessness and to do what we can to address them. Thank you.
Councillor Pitford to speak, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. The figures for homelessness among the LGBTQ community are shocking. According to a Stonewall survey, 25% of trans people, 24% of non-binary people, and 18% of LGBT people have found themselves homeless at one point in their lives. Homosexuality, bisexuality, and gender dysphoria are not mental illnesses or lifestyle choices. They are part of the wonderful diversity of human beings on this planet, and we should strive to make these people feel valued and included. I and many of my friends waited until they had a place of their own before coming out to our families. I had a friend 2 years below me at school thrown out of his house on telling his father that he was gay. But the story I wanted to tell you tonight is about another friend of mine from Wales. I'll call him Rhys to protect his identity. From an early age, his father would come home drunk and beat him. His older brother developed a drug habit and took after his father in beating his younger brother. Rhys didn't feel he could go to the police because he feared the fallout if he reported on his own family. Rhys had told his mother he was gay, but they both knew that they couldn't tell his father because the outcome could be life-threatening. Nonetheless, this boy got himself through college, but when he was 18, he received such a severe beating that, holding back the tears, he packed a bag with a couple of shirts and a toothbrush and got a bus into the city and then a coach to London. When Rhys arrived into Victoria Coach Station late one night, his face still swelling up from the punches he had received, he was all alone in this big city. He had nowhere to stay and didn't know where to find help. He used Grindr, a gay sex app, to find a man to sleep with. He slept with this man despite not being romantically involved, just to have a roof over his head. He got lucky, and the man let him stay for a while and helped him get his life sorted. He managed to secure a place at university and is now travelling the world with work. Unfortunately, much less nice versions of this story continue to play out in our city. I was talking to Rhys about what could have helped in that moment to stop him having to use Grindr to get a place to sleep. I asked about whether an office in the station might help, and he said that would have been too embarrassing to enter. But information about the help available on the coach itself would have helped. A sign on the back of the seats showing the options available, or with a link to a website. So I'd like to call on the Council to work with the coach companies and the train companies to signpost support services in public transport arriving into Westminster. Following this request, please would the Cabinet Member for Housing write to me to explain what actions have been taken by March 2024. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
I now call Councillor Hurd to speak.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I welcome this debate tonight and an opportunity to help set out what we as a council are doing to support those most vulnerable in our society. Rough sleepers do not choose to be in the situation they find themselves in. It in large part stems from a complex web of national political choices whose impacts have always shaped the situation on the streets of Westminster. Rough sleeping in Westminster is the result now of the national housing crisis, a mental health crisis, the drugs and alcohol crisis, cost of living crisis, and many, many more interlocking crises, where the council and its local voluntary sector partners are left to pick up the pieces for people in pain coming from across the country as systems fail. Here in Westminster, we do whatever we can in partnership with the local voluntary sector to help people off the streets, plugging gaps in provision and working together to advocate for fairer national policies to help them build better lives for themselves and to stop the drivers that lead to homelessness and rough sleeping. This has included excellent work with the Westminster Rough Sleeping Partnership, including around preparations for the response to the planned replacement of the Vagrancy Act, about which we await more from the new Secretary of State after the debacle of recent weeks, and work we're doing ahead of the winter, which I'll outline in a minute. Outreach teams and our homelessness partners like the Passage and St Mungo's work hard to unpick why someone has landed on our streets in the first place and to help them back into accommodation, support and, where possible, employment. I'm delighted that over the last year we've invested £2 million in accommodation to support rough sleepers with Bentley House, led by the Passage, delivering an additional 20 bespoke longer-term accommodation units for rough sleepers. In the coming winter months, we will be implementing a communal settings project with connections at St Martin's, supported by work with the Farm Street Church, the Passage and others, which will provide respite and an inclusive place for everyone who needs a safe space, including those who have no recourse to public funds, which is a particular challenge for some of our rough sleepers here. And building on the work done last year, we're delivering and enhancing our joint work with Camden at St Giles, which provides us capacity through triage and assessment process of move-on accommodation for those who are willing to work with us on pathways into work, accessing legal support and taking private sector opportunities. Our winter pressures plan that we're talking to our local voluntary sector about now will support an additional 150 people off the streets at any one time over the winter, over and above our normal business as usual provision. This is both through communal settings and by the emergency bed spaces in our hostels. And while our outreach services are critical to supporting those on the streets, we need long-term solutions to prevent people from slipping into homelessness in the first place. As already been mentioned tonight, we need action on housing benefit levels to help people stay in their accommodation, not just in Westminster, but across London and the country, so they don't crash into the statutory homelessness sector and then move beyond that into street homelessness that we're talking about tonight, which so often takes place in Westminster. And on behalf of our own residents, we've already talked about the work we're doing building more social housing and acquiring more temporary accommodation than ever before. But when almost 1 in 50 Londoners are now homeless and in emergency accommodation varying quality, it's inevitable that we'll see more of them gradually gravitating to Westminster streets as systems around the country fail. I want to stand with our voluntary sector partners to make that root and branch case for reform of the current government's housing and benefit policies. And I want to take the opportunity tonight to urge everyone in the chamber to take part in the Gordon Hospital consultation, which asks the community for their say in the future of mental health provision in the south of the borough. The lack of acute mental health beds since the Gordon's closure has exacerbated the persistent health inequalities in Westminster, but particularly relevant for this debate, the lack of a suitable local facility for our outreach teams to take rough sleepers in the midst of a mental health crisis is exacerbating the situation that we see on our streets. So, Lord Mayor, I'm proud to lead a council that is doing what we can jointly with the voluntary sector to put vulnerable residents at the core of its ambition, and we will do everything we can to support those in need, working in partnership with the voluntary sector and improving our communication with them over the months ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Hogg. I now call Councillor Harvey to reply.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I want to thank every speaker who took part. Councillor Hogg, you sketched out much of the brilliant work which our officers do. Councillor Pittford, the story you told moved me enormously. And just to hear school children frightened, Councillor Shearer, of what had happened, just reminded us about our duty. We can argue about what the government hasn't done and previous governments did all evening. Reeves and Mortimer like with plastic frying pans. What matters here is what this council can do. And I'm certainly proud of the work this council has done over many years. Our message is simple, that need for constant change. I got some of that coming through. But I would certainly suggest that find a way, leader, of having some off-site discussions with one or two of those who are leading our charities, and you might get a slightly different message. They will find it difficult to say that to you, so find a channel that will do that for you. They do have money, they wish to spend it. And I think as we walk out on the streets, as we leave this meeting, as we leave City Hall, we see what's happening on our streets, the conditions people come to almost every day. Perhaps people on the streets for 2 nights, for a week, for longer. And it's not surprising, is it, how many of them, if they didn't have mental health problems or drug or alcohol problems when they came, soon have them afterwards because of the conditions they are in. Human beings are basically very fragile, and we have to have constant regard to that. And one of the things that struck me most when I was in Portfolio was the depth of trauma among so many rough sleepers, and that's why mental health is just so important. Councillor Toll as well touched upon the community element. There are so many local charities and voluntary groups who help, and we should never ever forget that. But I think I close by saying that as well as the community itself, and our community deserves to feel safe, people deserve not to feel frightened of violent or drunken rough sleepers, those rough sleepers themselves deserve to feel safe. The biggest predators on rough sleepers are other rough sleepers, those involved in criminality or those just mad, bad or sad. And that is why we have constantly to work to improve what we do. So what we say is not to criticise, it is to say that we always have to raise our game and we can never actually rest on any laurels at all because this work is so difficult. Thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank you, everyone who's spoken.
Thank you, everyone, for your valuable contributions in this very important discussion. We will now vote on the motion by a show of hands. For clarity, I will read the motion to be voted on. This is set out on the order paper. Heading into the winter, residents are concerned for the rising numbers of rough sleepers across the city. The Council commits to further strengthening its relations with its third sector partnerships to enable the development of a joint plan for action in today's challenging circumstances. Together, alongside these expert specialist charity partners, Westminster must work to help those on the streets to find and sustain a stable and happy life, ensuring that every penny is spent in the most effective and joined-up way to help people at their most vulnerable. Those in favour? Thank you. Those against? Those abstaining? I declare the motion carried. We will now move on to vote on the recommendations of the report listed under agenda item 12 and entitled Report of the General Purposes Committee Programme of Meeting. The recommendations are deemed to have been moved and seconded. By a show of hands, can I ask those in favour? Thank you. Those against? Those abstaining? I declare the recommendations are agreed. That concludes the Council meeting. Thank you and good night.